Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John, they're the ones to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
You know, John, every time I play that intro, it puts a lot of pressure on me. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying by that?
You mean like prostate pressure, right?
Well, no. One of the lines says, they're the ones to follow, okay? You know, once again, when I give people advice, I say, okay, that's my advice. Now, do the opposite and you'll do just fine. So when the lyrics say, they're the ones to follow, I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe John, but not necessarily Brad. You know what I'm saying?
To quote every middle manager in the early 2000s, lead, follow, or get out of the way.
I hear that.
You know, a typical line from somebody that gets inspiration from a Lee Iacocca book. You know, let's read some books full of balloon juice and become a middle manager, Brad.
Hey, Lee Iacocca gave me my K-car, so I'm not too upset with it.
That's true.
Right.
Via Karen Carroll.
Right, he was the one that came up with the K-car, which quite honestly was an interesting revelation. See, Lee Iacocca is one of those guys that doesn't get all the credit he's deserved. I don't know why. And not only that, if you remember this, when Chrysler was making their comeback, which he was spearheading, he personally did all the ads. Remember he did? I'm Lee. You're too young to remember this because
I'm too young. Yeah, I would expect. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I would expect you liked his gimmick of I'm only going to accept $1 a year in salary. Aren't I a great guy?
I love that. And matter of fact, things got so bad. How bad was Chrysler Corporation back then? Do you know, this is like little inside history, do you know they were renting parking lots to park the new cars because they couldn't sell them? And at the time, I can't remember what I was doing. I had a friend or something lived over in Belleville, and the old Cahokia Downs racetrack, which was down there on, I think, 157 or something like that. The entire parking lot was filled with brand new Chrysler cars because they were grinding these cars out and nobody would buy them. And when I was at the original KSLQ, we had a deal where and they did this with radio stations all over the country. You would give them X amount of advertising and they would give you cars. And that's how we got this K car. That's how Karen Carroll got the K car. We must ended up with 10 cars and trucks. I'm not kidding you. We had to have 10 brand new cars and trucks, and we gave away like 6 or 7 of them. The rest of them, one of them we kept was a van, became the KSLQ money machine, where we went out and gave away money. And we had a couple others. They became one of them was like a courtesy vehicle. If we had, if we had like
to drive people around to guests. To and from the airport?
What we do is if guests came in from out of town, we'd give them one of the cars. We'd just say, hey, don't get a rental car. One of the guys from the station would drive out to the airport and pick them up, and then drive them back to the station. They would say, okay, this is your car for however long you're going to be here. When you leave, just come contact one of us at the station. We'll drive you back to the airport and take the car back.
That's a pretty good deal. And as you know, Brad, Elon Musk said that model is how he ended up personally parking all those Teslas out at Chesterfield Mall.
Some people in my generation, John, it's funny you should bring that up, made the correlation that, okay, back in the day, Chrysler had all these cars parked at shopping centers, things like that they couldn't sell. Is that what's going on with Tesla? He can't sell those things? But
that's because you get all your news from the Harpos right off there off Clarkson Road, Brad.
After I go play not racquetball, I was going to say after I go play racquetball, I have to go play paddleball. Okay, that is John Combest, Combest. Today's date, the 20th. We've gotten into the 20s. It's February 20th, 2025. This is the A block, which means we start off with this guy. And what's your name, sir?
I'm Casey Kasem.
And what does he do? He counts them down because of the fact that John has this extensive website called johncombest.com, and he puts so much stuff on there that we have to take the creme de la creme, the top 3. And we start off with?
In third place.
Speaking of your fellow seasoned citizens who need to take care of their health and watch the local news and follow the prescription of their doctors, a story from the Post-Dispatch today. It's brought to us by health reporter Michelle Munns. And she has a story about the state DHSS. You know, Brad, they collect health data from different health departments around the state to track diseases. And they found that in a 3-week period from early to mid-January to the end of January, the number of reported flu cases in the state of Missouri tripled in a period of 3 weeks. And keep in mind, that's only the flu cases that were reported, folks who went to the doctor, took a test, tested positive for the flu, and then those counties reported it to the state of Missouri. A tripling. Now, that number backed off a little bit in the first week in February, a slight dip, which some would interpret as maybe the state is over the hump in terms of reported flu cases. But Brad, I'm sure this reflects what you've heard from your fellow seasoned citizens, even people of normal age in the state of Missouri. And what it doesn't track is what has been all the rage on social media, which is people talking about the fact that so many people get some sort of devastating cold, some sort of virus. They go to the doctor, they test negative for influenza A and B, they test negative for COVID, but they're still laid up in bed for like a week because they have some mysterious illness that's not the flu or COVID. Have you talked to people that have experienced this, Brad?
John, you just described me. What do you mean, talk to people? That's me.
Is that what you had, Brad?
No. So far this year, knock on Formica, I've done fairly good. I have not had any flu or anything like that. I've had a goofy cough that I couldn't get rid of. But I think once I went to the ENT and I had the ENT put that 3-foot tube up my nose, down in my throat, and I think that cleaned me out. I think I got rid of that feather in my throat. No, I've.
Now, are you still? Sorry to interrupt. Are you still speaking with the down comforter that you chose to wash?
No, I got rid of it. No, I never.
Okay, I would hope so.
Yeah, I didn't wash it. I'm not that stupid. I didn't wash it.
Oh, I thought you said you washed it. I thought that's where some of the problem came.
No. It just one of the little pockets. Like they're all sewn. One of the little pockets became unsewn. Matter of fact, it's funny you should mention it because the other night, what today's Thursday? What was it? Tuesday night. Tuesday night, I have a super duper, in-house vacuum cleaner. A central vacuum cleaner, and I was cleaning that area, the affected area, with all the down things, and I stopped up the hose because I sucked up one of my socks. I didn't see it. And it's like this great big long hose. It's like a 30-foot long hose, and I can't get whatever. I'm pretty sure it's one of my socks. It got stuck in the thing, and I can't get it out. So no, I haven't had that. See, and once again, does Brad stay on topic? Man, right on topic. You ask me about sickness, and I tell you how I stopped up my central vacuum cleaner hose.
Oh, there we go. Oh, you said staying on topic. Yeah, I got you.
On topic.
I mean, the feather thing, once again, goes to show that you've got to stop mediating those pillow fights between your girlfriends, Brad. They get so worked up and they start hitting each other with pillows, and you try to jump in the middle of them and see what happens. You inhale them, and then you have a cough for weeks.
John, I've got news for you. I would never go out with a woman that had a down pillow because I am a Mike Lindell fan. And when my girlfriends have a fight, the foam comes out everywhere because they're always fighting with my pillows. I would never.
Well, hey, it doesn't surprise me you would pick up your women at Salvation Army, Brad. They could get a cup of soup and a date with Brad Hildebrand. What more could they possibly want?
You still remember my Mike Lindell story at Salvation Army, don't you?
Speaking of a place that you would love to buy a car, probably Salvation Army. But would you have to register it every couple years, Brad? Let's roll into story number 2.
Up a notch to number 2.
Down in the southwest part of the state, good old Jasper County, there's a town called Harl Junction. A state representative named Bob Bromley has an idea that I bet you could sign on to, Brad. Now, Brad, you being you'd have like a ton of amendments to this that would be oddly specific to vanity license plates or something. But let's just talk about what Mr. Bromley is proposing. He wants folks that have cars with a vehicle. If your vehicle is less than 6 years old, you can get a 5-year registration tag because the state law currently requires motorists to renew their registration every 1 to 2 years. I should flag that this story is brought to us by the Post-Dispatch's Jack Suntrup. So, Brad, if your car is less than 6 years old, you can get a 5-year tag. And before you weigh in on this, Brad, because I have a feeling this is something that you would agree with, there's a gentleman named Ben Baker. He's a state rep from the same part of the state down in Neosho. And under his proposal, cars built in 2012 or newer could avoid safety inspections if they have less than 150,000 miles. So that relaxes it. And Brad, the best part of the story from Jack Suntrup is a quote from the Midwest Auto Care Alliance. With your extensive knowledge of state government and cars, Brad, what do you think the Midwest Auto Care Alliance thinks of these proposals?
They are not happy.
You're exactly right. This gentleman, his name is Ronald Reiling, and he's a lobbyist for Midwest Auto Care Alliance. He opposes any legislation that would change or weaken the Missouri State Vehicle Safety Program because you know why? The effectiveness of the program is well documented. Who doesn't love Missouri's emissions and inspection program, Brad? It's well documented. It's a huge success.
Well,
what do you think of all this, Brad?
Well, first off, John, it's not Missouri's emission. It's only limited counties. Like, for example, in the St. Louis metro area, if you're in Warren County or Lincoln County, you're exempt. You don't have to
That's true. That's a great point. Thanks for pointing that out, Brad.
Right.
That's true.
And it's only in the metro counties in St. Louis and the metro counties in Kansas. The rest of the counties don't have emissions. We just have safety. Quite honestly, John, I'm going to shock you. I think the safety check is a good thing. I really do. And a perfect example. I mean, I know people that have 2 or 3 year old cars that have 150,000 miles on them. Okay, and just because it's like relatively new doesn't mean that someone hasn't gotten in and driven the thing and never replaced the brake pads and and there's ball joints that are about ready.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Ball joints are ready to break. I don't think the age is the issue. I don't have a problem with the safety inspection. I really don't. I think that's something that's good. And if you have a trusted mechanic, and I say trusted because I can give you a perfect example of someone that I know who recently contacted me, and she went to her dealership, and I'm not going to say which dealership it was, but if you light something, you light and you can figure out which dealership it is. If you're going to, let me put it this way, if you're going to blow up something, you light and that's where she went. And car only had like 115,000 miles on it. And she went for an oil change, and they ended up telling her she needed $9,000 worth of work on her car. And I looked at it, and she sent me this sheet. I think to myself, this is BS. And the crazy thing was, this is the funny part of it. There was a thing on there that she had to have her 120,000 mile maintenance, and the car only had 112,000 miles on it. So let me think about that for a minute. You got your 120,000 mile maintenance, but the car hasn't hit 120,000 miles, and that maintenance was going to be, that maintenance loan was $1,800, I think was the number. That's the downside. If you got a good mechanic that you can trust, good for you. They're going to take care of you. They're going to say, hey, look, this ball joint's, getting sort of, loose. I think you got another 10,000 miles out of it, but if it starts to get sort of funky, if you feel this in the steering wheel, come back and we'll change it in 5,000 miles. That's the kind of mechanic you want. Get what I'm saying?
I think you get your doctor's orders, Brad, about your faulty ball joint. I think you get it confused with your mechanic. I think you're at the age where you're confusing those, Brad. I mean, you just told us that one of your hoses is stopped up. I think you got that confused with your doctor, too.
Well, I haven't told you about my throw-out bearing. That's really in bad shape. Okay. Okay, now we go to number one.
The number one.
And the type of story that would be most likely to appear in Brad's C block, a.k.a. Crazy Weird Story block, I'm going to quote Brad Hildebrand. I'll do an impression. Brad, you see this crazy weird story about the samurai sword?
Yeah. Is that the story you're going to talk about?
Yeah. Did you see this Iron County story, Brad?
I did not.
Okay, so this is a fantastic story. In the Post-Dispatch, the 2 news outlets reported on this. One is Kurt Erickson from the Post-Dispatch, and the other is Marta Mize from the Springfield News Leader. State Auditor Scott Fitzpatrick, in his regular audits of different counties and different municipalities and different, taxation districts throughout the state of Missouri, took a look at the Iron County Sheriff's Office. Now, a while back, there was a little bit of monkey business, what, the old home furniture ads in the 1980s would call a little monkey business going on in Iron County. There was a sheriff and some of his cronies were doing some kind of wacky stuff in a domestic case, and that brought a lot of attention to the office. Scott Fitzpatrick's office looked at the operations that were going on there, all the spending that was going on. And you know what? Pretty hastily last year, the sheriff suddenly resigned. His name is Jeffrey Burkett. He hastily resigned just a little over a year after some other folks were seeking his removal. I'll cut to the chase, Brad. Fitzpatrick's office looked at some of the spending habits, some of the property that has been seized, and some of the property that was seized that just happened to, I don't know, grow legs and walk away. I'll give you some of the highlights of the audit. It turns out that some of the contracts for providing meals to inmates in Iron County, 1 year it cost roughly, about 20 grand, 21 grand to provide meals to inmates. They decide to bid it out, but don't open it up to bids. And then suddenly the cost of providing meals to inmates more than doubles in a couple years. That raises some red flags, wouldn't you think, Brad?
Yeah, they should be going to McDonald's like some of the police departments do.
Absolutely, they should. And then Fitzpatrick's office ends up going through receipts. They saw that there were so many examples of county cars were being fueled up at gas stations, but suddenly the card was rung more than once at a time, suggesting that, maybe somebody brought a couple other cars by and filled up gas when it wasn't just the Iron County Sheriff's Office vehicles. You get what I'm saying, Brad?
I've been there, done that. I know exactly what you're talking about because the department I worked for had that problem at one point in time. But that's a whole other story.
Yeah, and so to get to a lot of people like myself clicking on the story, there was a mysterious samurai sword in the evidence room that nobody could account for. And on the other hand, there were a number of items listed in the evidence that should have been in the room that somehow just disappeared. Brad, a little bit of that, we don't want YouTube to get mad at us, a little bit of that wacky green stuff that people smoke, that grew legs and walked out. Some firearms just happened to be lost from the evidence room as well. Fitzpatrick's office notes that due to a random sampling, they went in, they randomly sampled the stuff that should be in the evidence room and then checked that with what was actually there. Their point was there might be even more stuff that disappeared from the evidence room that they didn't have time or the method to check. So it turns out that there's a whole lot of what appears to be criminal activity, people misusing credit cards, people having some kind of shady bid process or no bid process for inmate meals. And then, who has the samurai sword? Did they steal it from somebody and just hide it in the evidence room? The world may never know.
But here's the important question, John. Did they have any golden dice?
They did, because that's how they solved all of their employment disputes. And you know what? That's actually certified by the Iron County Sheriff's HR department. They work with St. Louis City, and they said to resolve any sort of HR dispute, we're just going to roll the dice. It's like what Brad does every time he gets out of bed in the morning. Will his ankles hold up? Will his hip hold up? Or will he collapse on the ground?
You read the story.
Let's roll the dice.
You read the story about the golden dice in the city of St. Louis, okay? Well, let's talk about that.
I didn't read the story, but I saw the headlines.
Oh,
yeah.
my God. It's so bizarre. Okay, we'll talk about that in B Block, and it's funny because I will also tell you, and once again, John's going to say, well, Brad hasn't told this story in 2 weeks. I will tell you a story that I've never told before on the air. Matter of fact, it's funny because when you brought this up, I thought of when the police department I worked for broke up a theft ring, and we had one of the things that was stolen, and we set it up and used it in the squad room. And you're thinking, okay, what could that have been? And it was pretty funny because if things got slow at night, we would go in the squad room and we would use this particular electric appliance and have fun with it, okay? Have you any guesses? Just take a guess what it was. Take a guess. And
Ed, you and a bunch of guys using an electric appliance in private, I probably don't want to know.
You do want to know because it's pretty funny. Okay, B Block, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about golden dice and If I mentioned the name of the manufacturer, John would not believe me. He would laugh, but that used to be who manufactured these things. But we'll talk about that in B Block.